Today I'm joined by Benny and Andy as usual, but also I have another special guest. I have Sarah with me, my girlfriend. Say hello.
Hey everyone.
And today we're going to be talking some spooky occurrences that have happened to us in IRL, in real life. Who want to go first? I think you all have some lined up. I don't have any spooky experiences, so I will not be doing the spooky.
And and you don't know anybody else who had any? I mean, other than
Other than who's with it right now? No.
yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I could go first. Um, let's see. I've been trying to think of a bunch. Let's see. Most of them are from my parents. They've had some weird things happen. Uh, I guess we can start this one off kind of light. So my parents are from Colorado, and in Colorado is a well-known hotel up in Estes Park known as the Stanley Hotel. Mostly it's known for being the inspiration for Stephen King's The Shining. He went and stayed there one time, had a weird dream, and or at least that's what he claims, and then he got the inspiration for his hotel and the story from that. Well, I think this was when my older sister was just a baby, so this was before I was born. Um, my mom tells it that it was after my younger sister, or my older sister actually was born, and they had been visited by people from the church and from their neighbors and stuff to see my older sister just constantly over pretty much people solid 24/7 over the next couple weeks. So my mom had literally no time to recover. Was it's immediately, and she tells it this way: she came home from the hospital with my older sister to a house full of people because my grandmother had invited everybody over. So my dad asked, "Okay, what do you want for our anniversary?" Because it was around that time, and she was just like, "I just want some peace and quiet. Let's just go somewhere." And she said, "Okay." So he went and booked. I think they stayed a couple nights in the Stanley Hotel. They got a pretty good rate because it was off season, so that it was not tourist season. Um, so they get into the hotel and they're going to sleep and they're I think it was the second floor, and they started hearing people like coming up the stairs and walking around. They heard all throughout the night they heard like the sounds of like they said it was like a couple kids or whatever running through the halls and stuff like that. And it started getting to the point where they started getting annoyed and they're like, "What the heck's going on here?" So they started every time they heard something, they would open the door and see who, and every time there was no one ever there. So they finish the night, they go down to the desk the next day, and they ask the people in the front, is like, there are these kids, and so they complained about them, and the people, um, there's nobody else checked into any rooms on that side of the building. And it was like I think there were only a couple other people even checked into the hotel, and they were on completely opposite sides. And that's when they told them that apparently that's a pretty common thing that happens in that hotel is people hear kids running up and down the halls at all hours of the night, but they never see them. They never figure out where they're from or anything like that.
Ooh, that's pretty spooky, my guy.
Spooky.
Huh.
Is there a particular story like that, like, or a reason as to why they hear kids specifically, and not like adults, I guess, or other
Well,
noises?
the Stanley Hotel, I mean, you can even research this. It's well documented to be a very considered a very haunted, and a lot of that has to do with because when it was built in the late 1800s, it was used as a tuberculosis sanatorium because back then they thought that fresh air, the clean fresh air out of in Colorado would be good for people with tuberculosis. So there's a lot of stuff from that as far as carryover, you could say, from ghost stories.
I wonder if there was like a lot of children with tuberculosis, like if there's any links to children specifically.
Maybe I know that as far as I can remember, there also it also became it's also a pretty popular tourist location, um, and so a lot of kids would come with their families. Probably, I think some would come with the people that came to the sanatorium. Um, so there is connection to that.
That's interesting. It's typically, for some reason, like every time I hear about, um, every time I hear like about ghost apparitions or ghost noises, like for some reason, a lot of the times it's kids.
Yeah, you do hear a lot of
Uh,
in general.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Uh,
Is so you said Stephen King based The Shining off of that?
Yeah, he stayed in one of the rooms. I think it was like 412, which is considered one of the most haunted rooms. And apparently, he had some crazy dream. I can't remember exactly what the dream was. I think it's had something to do with a fire hose that came off the wall in a and so that be the inspiration wasn't that, like, it wasn't like, oh man, I should write a book about a hose that comes off the wall and strangles people. It was, I think the thing that inspired him was the isolation of it, and the idea that the place is driving you insane, which is the theme of The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining.
I
What
actually
is your
went on a I actually went on a ghost tour at that place when I was living in Colorado. Didn't see anything, and of course the tour guides were all like, "Oh, but then there's this, and there's also, and apparently one of the most common ghosts was what was his name? There's this dude named like Ravencroft or something like that. Very typical like Sherlock Holmes bad guy. And
yeah?
apparently he lived up to that reputation because he's been known, as far as like spiritual stuff goes, to like steal things from people and hide it away in places. And sometimes they'll wake up in the night and they'll see him like standing over their bed or something like.
Oh, so even has like a kind of like a super villain.
Yeah, I guess I can't remember what his whole thing was, but he had some sort of rivalry with Stanley, the guy who built it, or something like that.
Mm.
What did your parents think about it? Like, were they? I mean, obviously they were freaked out, but did they have their own input, or did they ever go there more than once?
They never stayed there again, but it wasn't because of the like the ghosts. It was just a thing that they thought it was weird while it was happening, and it was kind of like it was kind of spooky while, so I was like, that's kind of weird, but they never felt like threatened, or they never felt like they were in trouble or anything like that. It didn't scare them. It just kind of creeped them out a little bit.
It's because it was
And it was
a
just one of the
hoax. That's why it never scared nobody.
yeah, that's what it was. I'm sure that's what it was, Nick.
They have pre-recorded like
Maybe.
audio files of children, and they played them on the loudspeaker.
I mean, that's possible. There have been places that have been known to do stuff like that.
Has
Yeah,
there really?
just like the Stanley Hotel.
Oh yeah. I remember. I'm not talking. I don't know about like hotels that have done that, but there's definitely been like instances. Oh, there's a haunting, and it's just some dude playing a joke.
Yeah, did
I
you
Oh
ever watch
remember.
wow!
the BuzzFeed Unsolved show? That's like the whole premise is it's all fake, my dude. I swear it's all fake. Yeah, it
I
is.
don't know what you're talking.
You
Oh,
don't
you
know?
said BuzzFeed on.
BuzzFeed
Never,
Unsolved. It's a YouTube. It's two guys, and one's trying to prove that ghosts are real, and one doesn't believe ghosts are real. And they go to like these places that you would presume to be haunted, like the Sally House and things like that. And usually they don't really find that much, in my opinion, but it is pretty funny
that's
to
like
watch them.
just like normal BuzzFeed articles.
Basically.
Confirmed
But
fake.
what? Yeah, for real.
more
What's
common.
your take? Oh, yeah, no kidding. What's your take, Andy? Like, what do you? What's your take on this whole ghosts and children and?
Uh, as far as ghosts go, I don't know. I'm kind of the jury's kind of out on that. Like I'm on the fence as far as if I believe that. I mean, I definitely believe in spirits and I definitely believe in spiritual activity, but I'm not sure. I believe in like, oh, grandma died and she's hanging around and haunting the thing or whatever. I don't know if I really believe that, but I could definitely see the I could definitely see where sometimes spiritual realms kind of leave impressions on the I guess our realm. I guess you could say. I sound like a fantasy writer or something.
So,
But
so what you're saying?
Yes, you're using your arcane knowledge.
Open your third eye, Andy. So the verdict is that the movie Coco could still be real, right? It's
well,
plausible.
what I'm
I
saying
mean,
specifically with
listen,
this
Moana's
is
better than
like with the
Coco.
kids running up and down the hallway. Um, and most of the experiences you'll see in the hotel and stuff like that, very few of them are actually spirits that have you or like experiences with things that are intelligent that actually specifically do things to specific people or things like that. A lot of them are like, oh, somebody playing a piano. Well, you can, maybe that like it's the classic ghost story of and he did the thing and for the rest of the year at this night at this specific time you can hear him doing the thing or whatever it is. I think that's called like residual energy, where it's just kind of like it's not intelligent. It's just I don't know, I guess a reenactment of whatever happened. So it's not like
Yeah, maybe.
there to hurt you or anything like
Um,
that.
No, I pretty much agree with that. It's probably residual energy that you just hear it.
I think it's demons, my guys. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think ghosts are out there, but I think demons is real, my dog.
Yeah.
Because we all Christians, at least
No,
in this session here. So I mean, do you guys really believe in ghosts and spirits?
Yes.
I don't know if
No.
I believe in
Oh my
ghosts,
gosh.
but I definitely believe in
The only ghost around here is
spirits.
the Holy Ghost.
So could somebody explain what is residual energy? I never think I've ever heard of that.
It's basically where a place that had a lot of activity in the past, like it was a party, a parlor, or had a lot of in and out going in it, like a hotel. So you would hear things that had used to happen in it. There's a famous place in Savannah, Georgia called the Sorrel Weed House, actually, and they have a lot of that there, where you could still like smell the cigar smoke, in some of the rooms that had a lot of smoking in it, and that's
Oh
kind of in
wow.
a way of residual energy, so you could still smell it, even though it's not actually there.
That's
Yeah,
called
Savannah's
yeah,
being a
full of
smoker. That happens all the time.
It's a
yeah,
non-smoking
Savannah's full
house.
of stuff.
Doesn't
you
matter.
also you also hear stuff like people walking around. Sometimes you'll hear voices. That's it's all tied into that whole thing where it's like basically a repeat of something that happened before, and that's kind of just what it like. That's about all it is. Or I mean, that's the description of it as opposed to like intelligent action where something like a poltergeist type thing where things are literally throwing stuff out of cupboards and that kind of thing.
Could there be a like like a psychological aspect to these hauntings?
I personally think it's all psychological. I don't think any of it's real. I'm not going. I think people want to hear what they want to hear. So like, oh, I thought I heard a kid, and you're like, oh my gosh, I totally heard it too. That's my take on it, honestly. Not gonna
I
lie.
mean, I would agree with that in some sense that it's a lot easier to explain away. I mean, because our mind does try to put things together in ways that make sense. So if you hear a sound that you're not familiar with, like oh man, there's like the hotel settling or anything like that, it might you might perceive it as wow, that's footsteps because that's more familiar than the sound of the hotel settling. I definitely believe in those kind of things, but also in some instances, um, I don't think some of them are clearly things that you definitely thought you heard and you definitely believe it was something specific. Like my parents, they specifically heard footsteps like going down the hallway, like hearing them starting in one spot and moving across, like in front of their door and down the hallway, that kind of stuff. It wasn't like oh man, I thought I heard a footstep out there. It was like, no, it sounded like someone's actually walking.
Yeah.
So if that's psychological, maybe. I don't, I don't know. I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm just saying
I
it's
do
creepy
because
because it's unexplainable, or maybe it is explainable, but they couldn't come to an explanation that was oh, it's just the hotel settling. Yeah, but the hotel settling doesn't move down the hallway in specific
Yeah.
rhythmic
you don't
steps
know.
like a
You don't
person.
know. Are you an architect? Do you know how buildings walk and stuff?
So you're telling me
Yeah.
you're gonna hear children from the hotel settling?
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an element of like
Can we get Nick off this podcast?
Oh
Obvious,
my
his
God.
whole vibe, dude. You're bringing down the vibes, man.
Bringing the negative
like,
vibes,
we had this
bro.
whole aura going, and you're just stepping all over it with your sarcasm and your negativity,
disbelief.
and you're gonna pay for that, man. One of these days, man, something's gonna happen that you're not gonna be able to explain, and guess what? Everyone's gonna say, "Oh, well, it's just your mind, Nick. You're crazy," but you weren't crazy.
Look,
You ever heard of-
It's been 23
you
years.
ever-
I think something's gonna happen now.
you ever heard of? It could.
Dude, most heavy psychological issues take their form during this period of your life. So
Yeah, you ever heard of the boy who cried wolf? Well, this is the Nick who cried ghost. We're not.
we
gonna
don't
believe
actually
crap.
exist, Nick.
The Icarus who
We're
cried
all
son.
figments of your imagination.
I am your conscience, Nick.
You're not giving me very good advice there, Conscience.
You should give Benny your.
Dude, do you listen to Benny? No, you don't. Because he gives you great advice. And you just don't listen to it.
You should give
He doesn't
Benny
give me
the
any
cut of the
advice.
penny we just made. That's as your conscience. I'm telling you to give Benny your cut of the penny we just made from podcasting.
By the way, everyone, check out Anchor.fm. Listen to it on Spotify. We get like a penny for every 5 views or whatever. Every 5 lessons,
Give
we
all
get
your-
1 penny. Or
Ask your
15, or sorry, every
conscience.
15 listens, we get 1 penny.
Every
Ask your
15.
conscience.
Yeah, because
I am obligated-
every thousand listens, we get $15.
Okay.
Ask
I
your
guess what we should
conscience.
do is we
We
should
need
all just set up.
food. This
I am
portion of the
obligated to
podcast
tell
is
you to give all your cuts to Benny. I am your conscience. I have to be right.
Do you need my social security number, Conscience?
Yeah, go ahead. Wire that to me. Say it on the air.
4. I'm just kidding. 411.
Each episode, I'll give you one more number.
Oh, you don't know.
Keep coming back for more.
But they're
Come
all
back
out of
next week
order.
to figure out the next numbers.
This podcast, we should just rebrand it to from Lorecast to Identity Theft.
This portion of the podcast is sponsored by Nick's social security number.
Nick's tax returns.
All right. Who else?
All right, so yeah, let's move on. Who else has a spook?
I can go next. But like before I tell my story, what I was gonna say is that I wonder if there's an element of like social psychology to haunted places, because like as soon as a substantial amount of people say that, oh, like so and so house is haunted, and then now it just so happens that all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I hear it too.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's definitely some of that plays into it, especially at the more popular haunted spots.
Yeah, that's
Like if
true.
you go to like what people that go to a place to see ghosts are more willing to see something they can't quite explain and explain it away
More
as
susceptible to it.
a ghost. I wouldn't even say susceptible. It's a subconscious thing where they're coming in with the expectation of finding something. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way,
Oh,
because they coming in with that expectation, and then the way their mind works to put the patterns together fits that expectation that they already have created. And so, oh man, I heard a voice, or I heard, maybe it's not, maybe it's just an animal or something.
So raccoon.
They're more like it could be something like that. but it's they'll claim it's a ghost or whatever because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. There is another podcast out there called Lore by Aaron Mankey, and that's mostly what he goes about. Is mostly everyone, keeps saying they keep seeing the sighting of a guy who has like springs on his feet and can jump over walls. Once two people will talk about it, and then all of a sudden 15 people talk about it. So I definitely think there is an element of,
Bandwagon.
yes, bandwagon. That's a very good word. That's a very
Yeah,
good word.
yeah, that's very well documented in cases like that, and also like UFO cases and
Yeah,
those kind of
mostly
things.
before the internet, because the internet kind of like changed the world and the way we view things.
Well, I mean, even with the internet, there is some element of that still. It's not exactly in the same form, but there's also the bandwagoning thing still exists.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does. I mean, look at
it really
BuzzFeed
does.
Unsolved.
Oh my
Oh
Eh.
gosh, back
That's
to
actually really funny to
BuzzFeed.
watch though. So
All right, Benny, give us your story, my boy.
All right, so before I speak my piece, I want to say two things. One, I personally do believe in demons. I believe in angels and demons. I don't know. I don't very much believe in ghosts. I don't think like that the spirit of dead people come back to haunt you. I don't believe that, but I do believe that there are such thing as evil spirits, demons, and angels. And then two, it's a small disclaimer before I tell the story. So, um, and you're gonna see two ideologies juxtaposed in my story, and I am no way saying that one of them is superior to the other. Okay, and this will become very apparent once I tell you the story. So I'm not saying one form of belief is better than the other. So I used to when I lived when I was a high schooler, I was like maybe 15, 16, and I lived at home with my parents like most high schoolers do. And I belonged to a Pentecostal church, and that's where I went on Sundays. That's where my mother went. That's where my stepfather went. We went to this Pentecostal church. Um, and so one day they got a call from this guy who said that um, his kids, it was a son and a daughter, were possessed, which is also something that I very much believe in. I do believe in demon possession. So um, my mom and my stepdad went out, and it wasn't just them. They went. I believe the pastor of the church went with them, and some other people went with the church. And so my mom tells us that they showed up to this house. It was like a mobile home, so they showed up to the mobile home, and they could see on the inside there was I don't exactly know how many, but there was like one or two Catholic priests already in the home. And so the father of the house was who called my mom, who called the church really. So my mom and them showed up, and when they got there, they didn't go in immediately. They saw there was this Catholic priest in there, um, praying for this 12-year-old girl. And so when they showed up, when the people from my church showed up, they were like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll come later or we'll come tomorrow." Like, there's already somebody here, so to speak, and we don't want to, um, you know, we don't want to disrespect them, or we don't want to interfere with whatever they're doing. We'll just come back tomorrow. But then the father of the house said, "No, no, 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 wait, 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 no, no, don't leave, just stay, please stay. Like, they're about to be done. They're about to be done. Like, just stay." And so they were like, "Okay, we'll stay." So then what they started doing was they started walking around the home, and they started praying for it. They started praying for the family, and they started praying for the daughter and the son. Um and my mom says that the girl who was demon possessed, she would look at them from the window and like hiss at them and kind of claw at them. And I think at one point she even threw the Bible at the window. Obviously the glass prevented her from the glass didn't break or anything. And um, I remember my mom telling us that they that the girl who was demon possessed basically said she pointed to the Catholic priest, and she said, you know, these guys, I don't care about them. Like they're whatever. You can keep them here. I don't care about them. But those people outside, don't let them come in. Don't let the people outside come in. And so eventually, uh, the Catholic priest left, and my mom and the other people, they went inside, and they started praying for the family from the home, and they started praying for over the daughter, and basically what you would imagine as a stereotypical demon possessed person from the movies would do. Like she started just spazzing out and yelling and screaming, and they had to hold her down. And it was apparently very hard for them to hold a 12-year-old down. They were, big grown men, couldn't hold her down. And then eventually they left. I think things calmed down. They left. And the next morning, I do remember this because I was there. The family showed up to church on Sunday morning, and it went, church went on as usual. And it's something they do at a lot of Pentecostal, or a lot of churches in general, but particularly Pentecostal churches, they invite people to the front so they can pray on them and pray for them or with them. So they did, and then that's when the the girl who was possessed like started spazzing out. And I remember seeing this, like she went crazy, and they were trying to kind of like hold her down because she was just spazzing out, and I guess trying to throw her hands everywhere, and they were trying to prevent her from hurting somebody. And one of the things I do remember was that my pastor at the time was trying to pray for her or over her, and the girl, she would kind of, like, how cats like swipe their hands at things or claw at things.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
the girl would claw at my pastor, but and he was at clawing range, let's call it. He was close enough to where she could hit him. But when she clawed at him, her hand would always retract. So it was almost like if there was like this invisible force field around him. And so she would try to claw on him, and her hand retracted. And I mean, I was 15, and to me that was something that was, I mean, I wasn't scared, but it was very impactful that I could see how tangible, demons and how demons could be. And I'll never forget that. It was really, I think eventually the girl, um she came back to normal. And I guess we could say that that evil spirit that was within her left. um
Mm.
and they went on with their lives, and for a while they kept going to church, and I don't know where they are now. But that's what I'm saying. Like I believe in that stuff. Like I believe that the devil and Satan is real, and spirits are real, and there's uh the dark arts are real. And I believe that we shouldn't there's some things we shouldn't mess with. um and I think in this culture and media, I should say, has done a good job at portraying the occult as something cute, but I don't think it's cute. I think it's very real to me, and you just never know what kind of doors you might be able to open. Like, and something that, for example, a Ouija board. Like, I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but
No, I don't mess with those things, my dog.
yeah, no, I don't fool with Ouija boards. Like, I just, and Ouija boards and mediums like that, in and of themselves, are just physical objects, I would say. But the fact that you're trying to use them as a medium to practice the dark arts, or even try to fool with things that are beyond our imagination, or beyond our the paranormal, what they call, it scares me. It freaks me out. um and I'm legitimately scared at how, like I said, the media has portrayed Ouija boards and witchcraft and all these other things as cute and playful and cuddly, when they're really not. And you can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not, I know that there's people who are Wiccans, and I think Wiccanism a lot of the times and paganism is misunderstood. But I'm very aware you could say, or I try to be as aware as possible. When you watch TV shows or cartoons and they try to portray the occult as cute, and I don't know, I can't get behind that. I guess what I'm saying, but yeah,
Mm.
I witnessed that demon possessed girl when I was like 15.
That's crazy, dude.
That is really
Yeah,
crazy.
man.
It's really crazy, and I've never seen anything like that before.
Honestly, that must have been like the most interesting day at church ever.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've seen so when people say the word witch, you think of the Baba Yaga, or like, oh, this lady with a hat who flies around, or Harry Potter. But in reality, realistically speaking, and I say this because I come from a very Hispanic background, and in the Hispanic culture, there's still a lot of witchcraft, that people practice witchcraft, and it's more practiced than in our Western culture. So I've seen witches or people who practice witchcraft like come to church, and then nothing happens. We're just kind of doing church, and they get uncomfortable, and that could be a psychological thing. They get uncomfortable and they get up and leave and stuff, and that's what I'm saying. Like I just
Mm.
it's very real to me. It's very real to me.
So did you ever talk to like the youth pastor or any like your parents and like what did the youth pastor say about it?
Well, the I don't think it was like it wasn't the youth pastor. It was I guess what you would call the main pastor.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, right.
yeah, and I mean we all pretty much agree on the same thing, that there's evil forces out there that are out to get us, out to destroy us. And they would much say, I think that's what they would say, that um I mean, and it's even in the Bible. Uh, it's even in the Bible that I believe it was in, I can't remember what book or what chapter, but Paul said that our struggle is not against things of this world; it's against demons and principalities. So there's a very clear dichotomy of what's good and what's evil, and so I think that's
Yeah.
what they would say, that there's demons. It's a real thing.
Mm. Mm-hmm. All right.
And what's the second story that you
Oh, I only had one.
got?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, sorry about that. That was the only one I had.
the only
I got a
spooky.
couple others I could tell, but I wanted to hear because I heard that Sarah had some good.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you one thing, and that's just that I watched a lot of horror movies as a kid, so I would always hear like little the house settling, and it would freak me out because I thought it was something else than
Right.
it actually was. So maybe that's why I
What
don't believe, because I watched horror movies when I was like 6 or 7. So I'm desensitized.
what movie scared you the most?
Let's see. When I was a kid, I watched Saw 2.
Oh,
I jumped
Good
straight into it, and I
gravy.
watched. I was like, I snuck it. I was like 9 or something, 10 maybe.
Dang, Nick.
wow.
Yeah, and that's why
Holy
I'm so
crap.
weird.
Oh my gosh. You're so quirky.
I played Gears of War when I was like 11, so
That's not scary though.
when you're 11, chainsawing someone in half is pretty scary.
Yeah, I
The
guess.
Flood scared me when I was 6. Played that as okay. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh my god. So opinions. Do you want me to tell a lighthearted one, or do you want me to tell the one that I feel like was actually someone that is a part of my family that came to visit from the afterlife?
Ooh. I mean, I'm definitely more intrigued by the second one, but I do want to
Same.
hear both. So
Okay.
whichever
Well,
one you want to lead with.
okay, well, we'll leave the lighthearted one first. So the first one is actually something that happened at Girl Scout camp when I was in the 4th grade. And it's pretty interesting because there was 4 of us in that cabin, and we all saw the exact same thing, felt the exact same thing. And it wasn't like we all like bandwagoned at the same time. It was just like each other were asking each other the same question, like, y'all see this? And once we did, we were trying to figure out what it actually was. And so this is camp called Camp Misty Mountain. And fun fact, no Girl Scout camp site or anything can be considered haunted. So some might be haunted, even if they can't legally like say that. But we were at Camp Misty Mountain, and we were in cabin number 3, and it was a cabin really far out from like the main like center, and then there's other cabins the other girls were staying in, and ours was like down this pathway like in the woods. It was like from a horror movie. And so we stayed in this cabin, and we all slept on the top bunks, funny enough, because there was only 4 of us and we were all bunk beds. And I slept closest to the door, and it was like a screen door and then like the main door, and like this really big like AC unit over the door. It was huge. And I remember all of us that night, we're fun Girl Scout time. We're all having fun. And we would go to bed, and at the screen door, there was this figure of a woman with a dog. It just stood there the whole night, and none of us could figure out why it wouldn't move or anything. But each night we stayed, it would actually change positions. And
oh man,
it
no
was-
way, man.
it was so creepy. I had to sleep next to it, so none of us wanted to look at the door the whole night. And to this day, I can ask my friends that were in that cabin with me, and they all remember the lady at the door. And we even like opened the door in the morning, or like try to go outside to see what would maybe cast a shadow, but there was no like trees in front of there or really light fixtures or anything that would cause any shadowing at that door. But there was always a shadow of a woman at the door, and we never to this day could figure out what was creating the shadow, but it was very eerie. And actually, funny enough, towards the end of it, it kept getting more kind of creepy because she started like holding stuff. And when I went home, for a very long time, I actually saw a figure of a woman with an axe on my ceiling in my bedroom for years after. And then finally, when I like changed positions in my bed, it finally like went away. Like it faded away slowly every year, but I feel like it followed me home in a way, and it was kind of creepy.
Oh, that's the
That's-
lighthearted one.
Yeah, man. Like, whoa. I was
Hold
thinking
up.
like, oh, we saw this thing on the door, and it turned out to be, it was just the counselor, and she was being creepy or something. She
Yeah,
just
no, I
playing
thought you were gonna
jokes.
be like, oh yeah, we met Coco. Like that would have been cute.
No,
That's no way. I mean, I'd be freaked out then. I'd be freaked out now if I like looked out my window and I saw something like that.
It's
And
just
it
me,
didn't
Andy.
move,
Don't
but
worry.
then the next night it's like in a different position. No way.
It's just
no,
me, dude. It's okay.
Yeah, it was definitely, and then like it didn't have like features or anything. It was definitely just a figure of a woman, but yeah, it definitely changed positions on us, and it did not seem
Yeah.
normal.
That is.
So-
And it was actually
it was
really
like-
foggy too, not gonna lie.
So was it like a woman holding a dog, or was she like walking the dog, or
The
was
dog
it like,
was just kind of like, think of like a portrait, and like the dog was sitting next to her.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Was it a cute dog?
it was like a tiny dog. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I could tell.
And ghost dogs are cute.
Yeah, and so yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then the second one I have, I find it pretty interesting. I mean, I can't say for sure this is what I like. I know who it was, but back sophomore year of high school, me, my grandma, and my dad, my grandma was the mom of my dad. We all went to Ohio, which is where we were staying with a family friend, and my grandma was going to her high school reunion, and I had really wanted to go to Ohio since that's where my dad was from, and I was just like, I want to go to Ohio. And also my grandma's mom, her name was Mildred. She died before I was born, but I've always been told I was a lot like her growing up. So I'd always wanted to like visit her grave and pay my respects, since I've always been told that I was just like her. So we all take a road trip, 10 hours in a car ride with my grandma and my dad up to Ohio. long road trip. But we get there, and the first night, I mean, the weather wasn't that bad. It was like June or something. And, we go, we just enjoy the day. Everything's normal. We go to bed, and I sleep in this small room with my grandma. She's on one side of the bed. She's on one bed, and I'm on the other, in like twin-size beds. And mind you, we're in the part of Ohio that is a nowhere land. Like there's cornfield, soybean field. Like you can count them for days. So we're not in the city or even suburban. This is rural Ohio. And first night went completely normal, nothing happened. The second day, we went to actually go visit the grave and pay the respects. Everything was normal, you know. It was a little bit emotional since I finally got to pay my respects and everything, and, you know, normal day. But that night was definitely not normal. I go home, and my grandma's in bed. She's asleep. I'm in the next bed. And this is at a point in time where I couldn't really go to sleep without any kind of music in my ears. So I had my headphones on, music playing, and I'm trying to go to bed. And I wake up in sweat. Like I'm just completely hot and sweaty. I'm just shaking, and I really like it was just, and my headphones had fallen out, and I'm like under the covers. And as I wake up, there is a light at the end of my bed, and I mean it's so bright. It's like you might as well shine a flashlight into my face. It was so bright at the end of my bed, and I didn't look at the end of my bed because I was really scared. And then as I'm recognizing there's a light, the whole bed shakes, like someone's shaking my bed. I was freaking out because I was like, something shaking my bed. And as my bed's shaking, my grandma, who is completely sound asleep, she starts talking in her sleep, talking to her mom. She's completely saying, Mom, hey, Mom, like talking to her mom, and like a casual conversation. And the bed stops shaking, but the light's still there. And it wasn't until I go to sleep and wake up the next morning, because it just stayed there the whole night. And I just had to go to sleep with this light at the end of bed, and I never dared to look. I just prayed that it would go away. But I always believed that it was my great-grandma always trying to say hi to me that night, because of the fact of my grandma also talking in her sleep about her mom, which was my great-grandma. And the fact that my bed was shaking and there was just like this bright light. I just felt like maybe it was her saying hi after me paying my respects to her grave that same day.
Wow.
That was the last night we stayed too, so I was kind of glad.
Hoo-wee.
Yeah.
Did you sleep at all the rest of the night? Like, holy moly, I don't think I would have been able to.
Barely. I was already, and I was really sweaty too, because it was a very long night for me, to be very honest.
Ooh. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, no, I would. I imagine, Andy. That's kind of what, like, remember that night that my bookshelf collapsed? Imagine
Oh
that.
my gosh, yeah.
But times 1,000.
That's a story. That's one of the fake out spook stories.
Yeah.
So
tell them that
when
one.
I had just moved into the apartment, that was when David was still living here, and we were watching. I know that Netflix had that series, the haunted Hill House or whatever series, and David and I were watching it, and we'd watch it at night and whatever. Well, Benny had already gone to bed. It was like 11 or something like that.
I have a job and I'm a responsible member of society.
Right. Yeah, well, he'd gone to bed, but he'd also in his room was this shelf that was so bad it was literally leaning against the wall, like it had a curve to it, you know. So that's how in horrible condition it was. So we're sitting there, we're watching it, and it's at this intense point where there's like thunder, and the ghosts are showing up, and we're kind of on the edge of our seat, and all of a sudden, at the exact moment that in the show, like a huge thunderclap happens, we hear a huge crash, and at first we think it's in the show, but it's so much louder and so much like more present that we're like, immediately we're like. At first we think it's in the show, but then immediately after we process it and realize that wasn't in the show. That was in this apartment. Something happened, and David's like, "Oh no, he immediately knew what it was. Like, it was that shelf." So we're like, "Oh man, this thing fell on Benny and killed him in his sleep or something." So we run in there, rip the door open. Benny's like, He's awake because it woke him up, and he's like, what the heck? And this thing had collapsed in on itself at that exact moment. it just fallen right where it stood. Just, you know, the two sideboards just broke outwards, and the whole thing just fell down on top of itself.
That's some perfect
Yeah.
timing, though.
I
Yeah.
know, that was what was so freaky about it.
Oh,
I remember waking up like, what? No, well, to me, what was funny was that, like, David and Andy walked into the room, and I'm looking at them like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, are you guys, like, are you high or something? Like, what are you looking at me like that? Why are you looking at me like that? It's like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And then later I found out that they almost crapped themselves. Oh no! Speaking about fake uh Andy, you remember when you walked in on Tori and I?
What?
Remember when you walked in on Tori and I, like, in the
Oh,
living room? Let me tell that
yeah.
one.
A little spicy there.
It sounds
tell-
spicy, but it's not because.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
so
like-
short.
Oh,
Cause it's
disappointment.
me. I'm pretty mild.
We're not
So
that kind of
there
podcast.
I was minding my business, and I walk in a hole.
So what ended up happening was that I was hanging out with my girlfriend here at the apartment, and we were watching Hulu or something, and she had ordered some Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee uh on Postmates on a delivery app. And so, oh, it's on the way or whatever. And so we're just sitting there, and then she gets a notification saying, "Oh, your Postmates is almost there." Or I think it even said it's there. So, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm so thrilled about drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee because I really like it. And all of a sudden, the door just opens, and we freaking had a heart attack because we thought the Postmates person had, like, just opened the door and was gonna murder us.
Barges in there with your coffee.
Yeah, like, I thought you were supposed to knock, dude. I'm suing you. Forget that. And but yeah, the door opened like normal, not like a slowly. It was just like, oh, I'm home. And it was Andy, and we almost had a heart attack. And Andy was like, "What the crap are you guys like? Are you guys smoking?" And we're like, "Dude, we thought you were the Postmate person and just opened the freaking door like without knocking." That
Yeah.
that
family.
scared.
The family says hi. Psh, psh.
Yeah,
Don't
and
even
that's
shoot
how
up
I
so
died.
Here's your coffee frozen at you.
I know you have the gun hidden behind the coffee tray.
slow.
Here's
If
your
you-
coffee.
Why
if
does
you
that
had-
coffee look like a
if-
gun?
If you had ordered it from Amazon, they probably would have opened the door and just
Yeah.
like, walked in and given.
They would have hid it underneath your welcome mat.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And if the door had been locked, they would have opened it anyway and be like, "Oh no, we have a copy of the," and just like hand it to you and walk away.
We're Amazon. We have your information.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that was scary as crap. Tori and I,
Oh,
like-
dude. Did Benny? Did I ever tell you the story? Did Matt ever tell you the story of the weird dream he had, and then he woke up and he thought it had become a reality? And this is when we were in college, and it was like he said it was one of the most scared he's ever been. Did you ever hear that?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this is a great story. So Matt, do you know Matt? I'm not gonna say his last name on air because he
don't
didn't consent to
Think
this.
so. I think I may have left.
You-
before,
I don't know.
Or he was before my
I mean,
time.
he was there, but I mean, if I mentioned what his real name was, you probably would. But anyway, that's not important. He and I were roommates the last year of college at Bryan, and he was on one side of the room and he had his bed lofted all the way up. I was on the other side, but I didn't want to loft mine, so mine was about waist high. You know the door how the dorm beds were. So he, in the middle of the night, he has this dream, and it scares the crap out of him. And it's this dream of it's like open dorm or something, and and people are coming in and out or whatever. But there's this like girl. She's like a 12-year-old, stereotypical creepy little 12-year-old girl that's comes in and starts like harassing them and chasing people around the thing, and they're trying to hide from her and like, that kind of thing. And they're like, oh no, she's here. Oh, they're running from place to place and she's not leaving. And like, even after like the curfew and all that stuff. So they're like, oh, so he wakes up from that and he's like, oh, that was weird. He rolls over and he looks and he said that he just about had a heart attack because from where he was sitting, it looked like, so I'm laying on my bed. I'm dead out. I am, it's like 3 a.m. or something. And he says he swears that there's like that same girl that he just saw in his dream is standing at the edge of my bed, like leaning on my bed, like arms up, watching me sleep. And he's like, "Oh my God, Andy's gonna die. They're gonna kill. She's gonna kill him. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" So he starts like, he's like, he doesn't know what to do. He's frozen. He's like, if I say something, she might know I'm awake, and that might be the it. Like, what's going on? And then he starts noticing that the way she's positioned and kind of like the way I'm moving, it kind of makes it look like she's doing something else to me while I'm asleep. And he's like, wait. First he's all scared, and he's all like, wait, what is she? What the heck is going on? So eventually he works up the courage to take his phone and turn on that flashlight and see what's going on. Flips it on, expecting to see some crazy psycho chick that invaded our room or whatever. Instead, it's just my blanket had fallen partway off the bed, and in the dark, it looked like somebody standing there, and it wasn't.
Oh my god.
This is nice. That's good
Dude,
timing.
this is
right there.
coming. This is coming from the same Matt. So once again, scary, not scary story. It was my senior year of college, and Matt lived across the hall, and so the way my bed was lofted, and but my desk was positioned in a place where my back was facing the frame of the bed, so the part of the bed you used to climb up to the loft. And I was doing some kind of work. I might have been doing music homework, or might have been just doing any kind of homework. And keep in mind, this is the day before my. So I used to play in the uh, at the school's wind ensemble, and I was one of the percussionists. And so I was just chilling, and this was on a Thursday, and then like my final concert was the next day. And Matt thinks it's hilarious to I think my dorm room was open, or I might have actually had headphones in. So he walked into my room, and then he put his phone to my right ear, and he played the Nazgul scream from Lord of the Rings to my ear.
Oh my god.
So I had a heart attack, and I jumped back and I swatted, and I hit the frame of my bed hard as crap.
Oh, I
Oh,
remember that.
and I was so mad at Matt, and he was just laughing. He thought it was, I mean, now I think it's the funniest thing
Can we
ever.
see our story, Joe?
Which one?
And the
Oh
the
my
next
gosh. Okay.
the next day at the concert, I was like, I'm gonna kill you, Matt, because I can't even hold my cymbals
Oh
right.
my
Like,
gosh. All right, I just remembered a spooky story from a long time ago. I had to deep back in the day. It's a short one, but we were okay. So my family likes military stuff, and we like going to see like the Space Museum in Huntsville, Alabama. So we were in a hotel, and we hear this woman or girl or something scream from one end of the hallway to the next, and we heard like thumping. We opened the door, and there's no one there. So I do remember a spooky happening to me. That was really freaky. I just had to remember that because I heard screaming, and I was like, "Oh, that reminds me of Scream." But then
Wow.
this is a real story that happened to Sarah and I. Okay, so we switch off of which house we go to. Sometimes she comes over here, mostly on like Sunday nights, Monday nights, and like Wednesdays.
Don't give the internet your schedule, man. Like,
schedules now.
But listen,
or
like-
or Postmates is gonna show up for real.
so like, but we switch off. We switch off whose house we go to. So like, we were going to her house, and we just got out of the car, and one of her roommates thought it would be a great idea to go, put your hands up right now.
And hold a fake looking gun.
Like it was like a thermos that
Ugh.
was like, if you're not paying attention, looked like it was silver. So we thought we were actually about to get shot. It was ridiculous.
And not just that, but someone had recently, like a week or two earlier, had actually died in the building next to me from being murdered. So we're already on our toes, you know?
Yeah, and then he's like, beware of your surroundings, and we're like, please, you're gonna get us. Our hearts were thumping like crazy. Oh my gosh, it was ridiculous.
I thought I was
dude, a
gonna die
very
that day.
a very similar thing happened to me. One time I was visiting my family in Mexico, and it's Mexico, right? So I was hanging out with some buddies, and they were sharing mugging stories, and of course in Mexico, and I live in America, where it's relatively safer, at least where I live. So I was like, oh well, that sucks. I've never been mugged, and they were just like, oh yeah, this one time this guy like pulled a knife on me, and one time this guy this, and one time this guy that, and we gave him my money, whatever. And so we were in downtown I I, I live in a my family, I should say, lives in Chihuahua. Yes, it's a real place. That's legitimately
Yeah.
a real
Yeah,
place.
we know.
So
Yeah,
we're
we
we
know. We're
were
not racist.
oh, you're cultured. Oh, I can see you're
We're
cultured.
woke.
You're woke. Okay. So we were hanging out in downtown Chihuahua, and we were waiting for the bus. I was thinking it was like in December, November. It was cold, so I had a jacket on. We're waiting for the bus, um, and my friend thought it would be funny to like walk up behind me and like put his finger to my back and say, "Give me all your money." Dude,
Oh.
I, I almost, I almost crap myself because I was like, it's Mexico, so I believe in broad daylight someone would mug you, you know?
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
That's awful.
Turns out it was the Postmates guy. He traveled to Mexico and
He finally got you that coffee.
got me.
Put your hands up. Oh wait, here's your coffee.
Yeah. I've got a couple other stories. Some of them are like actual creepy experiences,
All
and some of
right.
them are
We got like
this
4
one.
minutes. I don't want to go over.
Okay.
Devin went over it by a long shot last time.
Okay. Okay. I'll throw out a couple options. I could tell you an angel story or a couple of short angel stories that my dad told me about.
Yeah.
I could tell you when my dad tried to scare when he was in high school. He tried to scare one of his friends, and it went horribly wrong. Or I could tell you a story that he told me when he was younger that kind of scared the crap out of me. And the event itself isn't scary, but the sort of somewhat implications of what it is were kind of freaked me out. So which
Well,
one of those three?
that last one sounds pretty intriguing right there.
Same one with
Uh,
the
I kind
last
of,
one.
I kind, I kind of wanted high school dad because I've met your dad, and so
Well, I can tell you that story after we're off air.
that's true. All right,
So
go with the last one. Give the
okay,
people what they want.
okay. So
Okay.
this I was younger when he told me the story, but it still kind of freaks me out today. So my mom, well, actually not my mom, my dad's mom, uh, grandmother worked in a nursing home. She was a nurse, and so when my dad was in high school, sometimes during the summers, he would work there as like a ward at this nursing home. Um, so one day, he's there, everyone's there, they're all working, and there's this lady on one part of the building, and she's been there for years. She's been there for I don't know, like forever. It's been forever since any family has seen her, um, and she's got a reputation as being kind of a nasty lady. Not many of the people working there like to deal with her because she's pretty nasty, which I think is kind of sad because she was probably pretty lonely. But it's come point to she's too old, she's dying, and they're in the room helping her, making her comfortable, getting her ready, that doing what they can for her because she's dying, she's having trouble breathing and the whole everything. Well, to note the thing to note about this, and this is an important detail, um, she was a Catholic, so she had this big. It wasn't a crucifix, but it was a huge iron cross that she'd hung on her wall and had been hanging there for years. Um, and that was that was like pretty much her only decoration that my dad remembers. But so he's in the room helping my mom or my grandma, I should say, getting this lady ready, and as soon as she takes her last breath, and as soon as the last breath exhales from her lungs, the cross just boom falls straight off the wall and crashes to the ground like a big crash, and everybody jumps because it's a huge, heavy, like 10-pound thing, which had been hung up there very solidly and hadn't moved from that spot in years. But at that exact instant that she died, that thing just crashed off the wall.
Dang, that's actually pretty interesting to be honest. That
Yeah,
as soon as she's dying, that's when the cross decides to fall.
Right. That was the thing that scared me, was the kind of the implicate, like, you could try to extrapolate what kind of thing that means. But one thing that I believe from the spiritual realm is symbols are very, very, very important. If you read pretty much any sort of event, like any sort, any sort of biblical, or any pretty much from any source of somebody talking to a spirit, they typically speak in some sort of symbols, or some sort of, something like that. So that, what's this? What is the symbol of that? As soon as she dies, the cross crashing to the ground. Like, what is that? You know, that's kind of what freaked me out.
Yeah.
I mean, because the first thing my mind went to after my dad told me that, and this is the thing that kind of freaked me out, is that's a symbol that things didn't go well for her
Oh.
at the end.
Mm.
And saying it like if you tell just a random person that story, they're gonna be like, oh, well, I mean, that's kind of weird, but that's not, creepy or anything. But when you fill it with the details of kind of like, you know what I've been taught growing up, and kind of the idea that of the whole symbology of it, it kind of it to me is like, I'm not necessarily sure that was an accident. I think that was maybe intentional by something, and that was what really freaked me out.
Yeah, it's pretty. That sounds pretty scary. How I don't know. Like, because I also believe that the spiritual world and demons and angels, like I believe that they can manifest themselves tangibly. I'm not saying that like she was possessed or anything, but in general, I think that the spiritual realm or the paranormal realm, however you want to call it, can manifest itself tangibly, and I think that's when like it hits the fan, so to speak,
Yeah.
because it's all fun and games, it's all ghost stories, it's all make believe until something like this happens, or you could actually, like in the case of my story, you can actually like see someone who's demon possessed.
Yeah. And that's the thing that kind of makes this, the one I just told, kind of weird, is you can evaluate that through any lens you want, and of course there's a different outcome. But the thing that's striking to me is the coincidence of it, is how exactly the same moment, something that had been hung on the wall, hung on there solidly for years and not been moved, fell off the wall in a very loud display. Everybody jumped. Everybody saw it happen, and they were on the opposite side of the room. So it wasn't like one of them knocked it off the wall or anything like that. Nobody was even near it when this thing happened. So all of those factors lining up at the exact same moment is kind of what's compelling for me.
Yeah, it's almost like it's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah,
Especially for something
and I
like
mean,
an iron cross on a wall that's been up there for a
yeah,
long time, for it to just suddenly fall as soon as she dies.
yeah. So so that was one of the scarier things that he told me, and and he said even the people, most of the people he worked with, not he wasn't religious growing up. My grandmother's mildly religious, but she's not really into that. And most of the people that he worked with then weren't religious either. So, but all of them were kind of freaked out by that, because they all kind of got, I guess, the same sort of sense from that, is that that it wasn't just a crazy freak accident, you know. And he said that, and he kind of wraps it up by saying, he's like, yeah, no, people were pretty quick to leave the room after that. Uh,
I would have
I
left
mean, I'd
too.
I'd left too. Yeah, no kidding. Is that all the time we have, Nick?
Just about. We're at an hour and 4 minutes, so start wrapping some stuff up, if that's okay with you fellas.
Yeah, that's fine
yeah,
with me.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Lorecast. This was mostly, actually, it was all, um, what you call, all audio, no visuals this time. Be sure to check out the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get your podcast, because I use Anchor.fm, and Anchor.fm allows me to put it everywhere. So we're not just on Twitch and YouTube. So be sure to look at us for other places. I don't know what I was trying to say. I think we will try and do Over the Garden Wall next Sunday because that's like right after Halloween. The story takes place, so it'll be just like in IRL. I don't know if we'll do anything, if anyone will do anything on this channel on actual Halloween because we're all pretty busy. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you all in the next episode of Lorecast.